In just a day, Hurricane Sandy tore through the mid-Atlantic region, leaving millions without power and tens of thousands of people homeless. But it's taken more than 2 months for the House to take serious action. On January 15th, the House passed a Hurricane Sandy relief bill that would grant affected regions $51 billion in aid. These funds will go to repair the Northeast transit systems, as well as fund the Army Corps of Engineers' plan to build levees and flood walls. The full $51 billion relief bill passed the House with 241 votes in favor to 180 opposed. Though Republicans comprised the majority of the nays, the bill saw strong bipartisan support, especially from those whose constituents were directly affected.
Right now, we are standing together as one in a bipartisan show of support. The time for recriminations is over. Let's stand together as Americans, and let's get the aid to the people who need it, because in my district alone, in my community, people are homeless, people are cold, people are without food. This is a serious, serious matter. We have to address it. We have to do it as quickly as possible. I'm proud to stand here today with all of us united.
Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's what all the members of this body should ask themselves. If they were in the situation of the states that were so severely impacted by Hurricane Sandy, how would they vote? The fact is that natural disasters are occurring with more frequency and with greater severity. And so there's a very good chance that in nearly every congressional district in this country, this may happen to you. And of course, when it does, property values go way down. In fact, billions of dollars can be lost, certainly were with Hurricane Sandy. So where does the municipality get the money to repair? Likewise with the state. The only place you can turn to is the federal government. That's why we are here.
Though the Hurricane Sandy relief package had bipartisan support, there were a list of amendments from Tea Party members pushing austerity, namely the Mulvaney Amendment. This amendment called for billions of dollars in emergency aid to be offset with cuts to federal spending. If this notion had passed, it would have been completely unprecedented.
I don't like across-the-board cuts any more than anybody else does. I offered other alternatives. They were ruled out of order. But I would put it to my colleagues, just tell me what you're willing to do without. Are we willing and able to do without anything so that these people can get this money this year?
I rise in strong opposition to the Mulvaney Amendment. It would make indiscriminate across-the-board cuts. It would create a $2.1 billion shortfall in military pay, take $529 million from military health care, $1.4 billion support for our troops in Afghanistan. Even before the Mulvaney Amendment, the Joint Chief of Staff say we are on the brink of creating a hollow force. It would also cut care for wounded warriors after they come home, reducing veterans' medical services by more than $800 million. And here at home, the amendment would eliminate $650 million in funds to repair, rebuild, and expand highways and bridges. It would cut more than 139,000 low-income pregnant women, infants, and young children from the WIC program. It would take $500 million from the National Institutes of Health for research into cures for diseases like cancer, diabetes, and Alzheimer's.
In a Huffington Post article, Brad Johnson, who is the campaign manager for grassroots organization Forecast the Facts, says those supporting this measure are backed by corporate interests, like the Club for Growth and Americans for Prosperity, a group run by billionaire David Koch.
I think what's happening is the Republicans who are supporting this are putting on a ballot. They're trying to set a precedent. And they're trying to see if they can get away with this new argument, this new argument for cutting essential services for people. And the argument being, well, when there's a disaster, when there's a hurricane, that's a reason to cut funding for education or cut funding for parks or to cut funding for caring for the elderly.
In the end, the Mulvaney Amendment failed, but it did garner the support of 162 members, splitting Republicans 157 to 71. Those against the amendment cited the desperate need for emergency aid immediately.
We are not crying wolf here, I say to my colleagues. There are huge gaps. People who have filed for insurance claims and find insurance covered only this much. How do they ever recover? Same goes for the infrastructure in New Jersey. 860,000 people, 860,000 people every single day use New Jersey Transit. That infrastructure has been demolished. Locomotives, cars, tracks, as well as stations. We need this money. We need it now.
Chair of the National Lawyers Guild Hurricane Sandy Task Force, Joel Kupferman, says that this aid is much needed in communities where he works, such as in Staten Island and Coney Island. But he says the passing of the bill has been met with healthy skepticism, especially from vulnerable populations living in public housing.
I know that this money gets filtered down and that many residents, mostly tenants of NYCHA, which is New York City Housing, has not been given much aid at all. And they're just concerned that the money is going to go back to the city, who's been very slow in distributing the funds in the right places.
Hurricane Sandy is the second largest natural disaster relief package in U.S. history, only behind Hurricane Katrina. Kupferman says public housing residents have learned their lessons from Katrina, deciding not to leave their homes for fear of not being able to return.
They're scared, and we think justifiably, of leaving their apartments because we learned something from Katrina, that people who left public housing down there were not allowed to return. So it's the people that read a little bit of history that are aware of once they leave, they might not be able to to come back. And also, we've had a lot of problem with people who are disabled. They were sent to shelters, and a lot of those shelters are not ADA compliant, or they weren't even accessible to wheelchairs. So there's a lot of population that's been neglected and slighted.
Kupferman recommends that residents be given FEMA funds directly.
Thousands of residents that are sitting in their apartments with wet materials that is basically incubators for mold. Mold is becoming the #1 public health issue, and yet these people have not been given the tool. It's important that FEMA listen to the community more, and we've been hearing excuses of different federal agencies that FEMA won't give them the money, and also we're hearing from FEMA that the city and state's not asking for the right amount of money. So I think there's got to be a higher level of accountability that's there, and I think the congressional people have a right not to give less money, but to give money to make sure that it goes into the right places.
If the funds go to the right places has yet to be seen. The aid package will likely be approved by the Senate next week, totaling Sandy relief aid to about $60 billion. For the Real News Network, Jessica Devereaux, Washington.